9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. 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 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Clear tower. Roger tower.
Welcome to the Alien Probe Podcast. It is Saturday, July 26, 2025. I'm Doug. This is MUFON Matt. And joining us today is Artemaeus.
Artemis.
Artemaeus.
Artemis.
It's not Artemaeus?
No. Artemis. Now you got me messing with
I bet you did. How you doing today?
I'm fantastic. How about y'all?
Good. You've had a lot of experiences, it looks like. A lot of things have happened. Does this happen to you all the time? All these.
Yeah, so what's interesting is that the vast majority of what has happened to me or what I have experienced, it didn't start until I met my now wife, Tillie Treadwell. And you could describe her as an intermediary. Some people might call her a psychic. Otherwise, somebody who is capable of seeing and hearing things that other people cannot, and not in a clinically psychotic sort of way. So she really completely changed my life, the trajectory of it, and since then, the number of paranormal experiences that I have had has been exponentially increased. We'll just put it that way. So, where do you want to start?
Start from the beginning, from when this first started with you. Some of the experiences.
Sure. So, like I said, pretty normal, average life. Typical egotistical dude who thought that he knew a whole lot about the world before I met Tillie. I went to college, studied human psychology, human anatomy, animal behavior. So a lot of it, my lens is often through evolutionary biology and heavily rooted in, I guess, the animal aspect of human nature. And I had a pretty good handle on that. But Tillie is as some people have said, seemingly a completely different creature. And when I met her, so we were actually both in the dating scene, online dating, looking for relationships. And we had pretty good rapport over messages and DMs. So I decided to meet her in person. And it was interesting because when I met her in person, as I've, now that I've been with her for nearly 10 years, I realized that my initial response to her in person is pretty typical, one way or the other, of the way people usually respond to her. She acts like a mirror for people. So when you meet her, she tends to bring out whatever your maybe deepest self is, and or whatever garbage you have to work through. So when I saw her, despite having great rapport over messages, saw her come bouncing out of her apartment just so happy and cheerful, and the first thing that came to my mind was, nobody can be that happy. And now I can say that with some humility and poking at myself because, what a jerk thing to say, really. But as I, came to understand that this sort of stuff was keeping me from really reaching my full potential with, paranormal experiences, and was also potentially dictating the type of paranormal experiences that I might have come into contact with. So foreshadowing for later. But yeah, so the beginning of the date was kind of rough and nothing too strange out of the ordinary initially, but we ended up getting locked inside of a mall after hours.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
First date?
This was first date.
No.
So like we're walking. It's not like we were hiding, off in a dark corner or anything, and we were literally just walking around the mall, and we realized, shit, nobody's here, so it's time to go. Like, it's getting late. So we go to leave, and that's when we realized we've been locked in. And that's when security, came over. Oh, I didn't even know you guys were here. It's like, we weren't hiding. I don't know how you missed us, So we go out, get to the car. I'm getting ready to take her home, and Tillie decides to open up a little bit more and drop a bombshell on me. And I keep trying to find different ways to describe this, but it all comes around to saying the same words, which is that she essentially reached in to the deepest parts of me, what I would describe as me, and essentially gave me a soul reading in essence, and was telling me about myself, but in a way that went far beyond the masks and the characters and our avatar, whatever we have here on this planet, the way that we interact with other people day to day. And it was just this instant soul recognition, and she saw me in a way that nobody else ever had, which, as far as relationships go, I think most people are really looking for that. They're looking for somebody to see them on that really deep level and connect with that type of intimacy. I've heard it called into me see.
Oh,
And she
Oh,
just
nice.
she
different.
pulled that right out, and immediately I felt seen, and I felt loved. She was telling me, I love you for who you are underneath all of this. Me having grown up, with a military, Marine for a father and a very young mother. I was born when she was still in high school.
Oh,
My
wow.
parents were, we'll say, not very emotionally intelligent, for lack of a better word. I love them. I have a good relationship with them now. It's all cool, but I didn't really grow up with that sort of um, care, I guess you could say, and a lot of people don't really. So she tells this to me about myself, and then she gives her piece de resistance, which is a form of validation, pulling some information that she can't know without peeking to the other side of the veil, essentially. So she said, "There's somebody here helping to facilitate this relationship that we're trying to start, this soul contract, essentially." And he's describing himself, presenting himself as a Native American chieftain. And she proceeds to describe how this individual looks. And, I'm whiter than white. I have no Native American in me whatsoever.
That you
But
know of.
yeah, that I know of, that's true. So as soon as she starts describing this individual, I knew exactly who she was talking about. And this was the crazy part, was that so my dad collected Native American memorabilia. It's just something that he felt drawn to, connected to. A lot of our house had a lot of Native American in it. And on the wall outside of my bedroom door, my bedroom was a portrait that we had been gifted. I don't know from whom, but it was of a Native American chieftain described exactly as she said. And literally, this guy had been watching me all throughout my teenage years, growing up as I came to and from my bedroom, in the family home. And she had never been to my house before. Remember, this is the first date. I had never seen her in person until
Right.
now. And she's telling
Wow.
me all this, as sort of like a 1-2 punch. Like, I see you, I know you, and, here's some information that tells you
Right.
I'm not, not feeding you a line of crap. Like, I'm not, cold reading you like some psychics have been, known to do, pulling just enough information that you can relate to, but, still seems somewhat mystical, but was actually not very. It's just observant.
Right.
So she pulls all of that out, and I'm, immediately every wall, every defense, every ego that
Gone.
I had ever put up, just boom, smack. I'm dead, right? I got nothing left at this point. I'm seen, really seen. Caught with my pants down, essentially. So you know I'm blown away, right? And I had started to dabble in, what if there's more kind of information, because all the studying that I did, there was still something within me that was like, it can't just be this. Like, I know that there are NDEs, there are people who have, like, even with ayahuasca, like, people who trip, they have similar experiences. They describe similar things without ever having known, heard of other people's stories. So, like, there's something, or there's archetypes, there's Jungian, consciousness, there's something. So when she drops all this on me, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, here we go. This is what I'm looking for, right? So things were quiet for a while. Didn't really get a whole lot more from that, because, I mean, imagine you're just a normie and, like, I don't know, an alien just pops up in front of you like, hey bro, what's up? Like, it's
There
cool,
was
let's chat,
no other
It's
contact. I mean, that was the
yeah.
one time, and then it was like a pause.
Right, yeah. So, well, just so that initial thing, and that was it. I mean, she would tell me periodically, like, Chief, as this individual called itself, Chief says this, Chief says that, and they were always very timely things, like stuff that I'd been dealing with in my head, but maybe not very communicative, because dudes, we don't talk. like
Right,
that, especially
right.
Yeah.
when you have a Marine for a father, like the,
Yep.
Oh no.
Hide all emotions out the window. Yep.
yeah, exactly, right. So she would come in periodically with, Chief says this, Chief says that, and I'd be like, all right, man, like I don't even have space in my own head. Like, okay, like need to I guess buckle up for this. So nothing for a while, just kind of letting it simmer, settle, not freak me out too much, probably. Until, we went from where we were living up north and then we moved to Florida, which for anybody that's familiar with paranormal stuff, Florida just seems to be one of those hotbed places for
Yeah.
weird stuff. I mean, Florida Man
Florida.
is our mascot for crying out loud.
Right.
Like, it's just weird, whatever happens here. So that's when things really started to pick up, and actually come to think of it, shortly after we actually got married. So that's that's when, some dudes are like, oh, that's when you're gonna see the real woman, that you married. Like, and I did. And
Yep. Yep.
the
There's
portal opens, like, then that's when all stuff starts coming in. So yeah, so we got married. And yeah, so the first experience was one of those. It seemed simple, but when you really thought about it, that's when, like, the true nature of the beast sort of starts to trickle in, and you get all of those questions like, I really don't know what I'm doing or what I'm talking about here. There is clearly something else here. And it was losing my cell phone for a period of time. So I knew that I had lost it in the bedroom. And so I'm pulling up blankets, I'm feeling all over the bed. We had a fitted sheet on the bed, and, just, lifting up, not the fitted sheet, but just, blankets and
mattress.
whatever, pulling things, pillows, like whatever, looking under the bed, behind the bed, like, okay, it's not in there, it's not in the nightstand. Now you start looking other places, maybe I'm losing it a little bit, maybe I carried it with me, set it down somewhere, still can't find it, looking in weird places, in the fridge, under the car. I'm like, okay,
garbage.
got
Check the garbage.
right, garbage, whatever. It's gotta be. Now, like, I'm open to the possibility that, a magic trick essentially has just occurred.
Yeah.
Because
A portal
clearly it's
opened,
not
your
working.
phone went in it, it closed.
Right. So I'm like, okay, can't find it still. And I go back to, the scene of the crime, where I knew I saw it last.
Yeah.
So go back to the bed, and blankets are all off again, except for the fitted sheet. I'm running my hand over the bed, and I hit where I had been laying, where I thought I had left my phone. I hit the phone, right? But underneath the fitted sheet is the phone.
What?
Oh wow.
And I know that I'm getting goosebumps even just thinking about it. 'Cause
Right.
I know I did not make the bed. I didn't pull that off. And
Right.
Tillie's not the kind of person to play those kinds of, like, pranks, because she wants genuine experiences
Correct.
for you to have, and then you to believe them, because she's never set you up otherwise,
Right.
So no doubt, basically. And so there it is, and I'm staring at my phone underneath the fitted sheet, and the gears are turning, right? Thinking, okay, there is no other explanation
No.
other than something I'm unaware of. And that's when Tillie goes, hey, have you ever heard of, like, quantum dimensions? And I'm like, no, I'm completely unfamiliar with physics. I took the course in college, but I didn't go that direction because I'm not that math brained. And
Yep.
so I'm like, no, I'm very unfamiliar with this. And she goes, well, I think that your phone was precisely where you left it, but it went to another dimension and came back in a slightly different place, something that wasn't quite where you left it, but, in a way that was undeniably inexplicable, if not for that
Something.
explanation.
It's not you.
So,
Okay.
so that's when things, the chasm is widening, right? This crack in my, perception of reality is slowly beginning to open up further and further, just with losing my phone and having it appear in a place that I have no other explanation for other than to accept what she's saying, which is, yeah, it just disappeared into another dimension for a minute. It'll be right back. No big deal,
Yep.
right? So, yeah, so that happened. And we bounced houses a couple of times, and more of that sort of stuff would happen. Things would disappear and then reappear in the same place. So another incident that occurred, which was definitely more blatant because it occurred right in front of my eyes, and this was, kind of leading me up to this point. This was probably, I'd say, another year after the phone disappeared. that Tillie and I were both sitting in front of a mirror, getting ready to, I don't know, get ready for something. And it's a plain mirror. It's a sheet of glass. There's no shelves or anything above it. It's plain. And timelines, just as I'm saying when this happened, just for anybody watching across podcasts, my timelines are usually screwed up. I don't remember exactly when stuff happened, so it could have been a couple of years after that.
I'm bad with dates too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Either way, the order in which these occurred, they all did occur though. So we're sitting in front of the mirror, getting ready. Nothing around this mirror. Very plain bathroom, and I'm very close to the mirror, and I see about belly height or so, a black hair tie similar to this one, literally just drop onto the countertop. And it didn't come from, behind me. Tillie's next to me doing something with her hair, so it's not like it kind of flung out of her hair, came from behind me or next to me, and then landed on the sink. It literally came and dropped about 6 or 8 inches from the middle of the mirror.
Right. Out of middle of nowhere.
Couldn't miss it. Again, black hair tie and looking right ahead.
What was your reaction? What was your reaction? See, that would kind of freak me out a little bit.
Yeah, so this is a funny thing. Like, for anybody, so because I've studied animal behavior, human psychology, our brains are designed through experience over time to construct expectations. So, you see a chair, you think chairs for sitting. You don't have to sit there and wonder what pieces of furniture are for. Just your brain, you learn over time, and you have programs essentially that your brain is running because it thinks that's efficient. It's for survival, and it does tend to narrow your vision over time, which is why people tend to get set in their ways. This is, part of what contributes to that. It's called the default mode network in your brain. So, I am, obviously, I have never had anything like this happen to me before outside of a magic show, right? That's specifically designed
tricks.
to,
it's a trick.
To be illusory, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a plain day. So because I don't have a program for this, that's usually when your fight or flight response will kick in, because people are generally pretty spooky. When stuff happens that they are unfamiliar with, that's when your beta brain, your beta waves kick on, and you have the I'm going to freeze, I'm going to run, or I'm going to fight.
Yeah.
But this was not a very threatening situation. So I hit freeze. And it's like that meme, if you've ever seen it, the error 404. I don't have a program.
Right. It's just turning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's buffering.
Right.
So I'm staring at it because I know I didn't, it's there. It's not like a figment of my imagination. It's sitting there on the counter. I know I saw what I saw.
I have a question.
And,
did you need it? Did you need one at the time?
Okay. Perfect. So I'm sitting there staring at it, and Tillie, bless her, she knows like when I'm at a loss. I need some help. Like, please, Jesus, take the wheel. I need somebody to tell me like what's going on here. And she goes, "Oh, I needed that." Right about doing her business.
Right.
And I'm looking at her and I'm going,
still
okay. So is this lightweight what people are talking about with manifestation?
Yeah.
I don't know too much beyond that, and certainly, it's possible. People talk about these stories all the time. I wished for it and it came true, but to have something just sort of literally appear out of nowhere, that was, again, another eye-opening experience for me to think, okay, some other things are possible here. And because you are in alignment potentially with it vibrationally, that you could manifest things like that, which previously I would have been like, what are you talking about? That is literally impossible.
Right.
What we know.
Right.
So a couple of those interesting. Go ahead.
That's awesome. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Did she see it too, or was it just strictly you, and then you told her, hey, this just popped up out of nowhere?
Oh no, she saw it.
She saw it.
Just it. That when she's there, she sees what I see.
Okay.
She just has more knowledge about why it's happening, or even doesn't have that initial response.
Right.
Because Tillie. And we could talk a little bit about Tillie and her differences. Some people would refer to her as being part of the neurodivergent community, which that's a big word. It gets slung around to people who want to not be special and not like other people. But when I say neurodivergent, I mean it in the literal way, which is that, our brains, genetically speaking, tend to come a certain way, and we use them based on the way that we are kind of set. But we can change that through meditation and different practices. We have more control over our brain pathways than we think.
Correct.
But some people are born with very, very different pathways that are active in their brains than the average person. So we would call them neurodivergent. Most people are familiar with autism, and that's another huge category. But those people are considered neurodivergent because their
Spectrum.
brains operate, in a very, very different way than the average person. Some of them, what we might call not functional, nonverbal. I mean, we don't really know because we can't communicate with them what their inner worlds are like, all the way to, high functioning autists, where something is different about them because their social rapport is rough. We'll just put it that way.
Correct, yeah.
They don't blend in like that. But again, it's because their brains are working in a totally different way, and it has a lot to do with ego. So they would be considered very low in ego content, very objective. They don't have strong opinions or judgments or feelings about things. They look at something and they're very literal about their observations. We might look at somebody and judge them because they look poor or they're acting a certain way or whatever, and that's really just our experiences projected onto that person. And many times they may be correct. There are stereotypes for a reason. But
do you
somebody
think
like
do you think
Go
that
ahead.
I'm sorry. Do you think that autism could be the next step in human evolution?
you're definitely getting somewhere with that. So that's kind of where I'm heading. Perfect that you should say that. So I do think that brains like that are evidence of the next coming, you could say, some disclosure,
Yep.
essentially. You may call them hybrids. I mean, people have different theories about who they are, exactly what they are. But what we do know is that their brains, when you measure them, are measurably different. They're operating, activating different pathways in their brain, and their brain waves, their resting brain waves are different. So, quick education in this. There's the typical brain waves. You have alpha, beta, theta, and delta. There are gamma brain waves, but we're going to set those aside for now. Beta would be where most people operate day to day, what you would consider that fight or flight, interacting with the average world on that survival based mode. Alpha would be your meditative state, calm, observant, non judgmental. Theta would be the twilight between sleep and awake, and delta would be deep sleep. So we actually went to the Full Disclosure Now conference a couple of weeks ago, and we got to play with some of the new tech that some people had, which could measure brain waves. So Tillie and I each sat down for a session just to measure our brain waves. I displayed, pretty typical, low-grade beta periodically. I was running a fair amount of theta, which is twilight sleep, and that's interesting. And alpha, when I actively meditated, and now I know how to activate my alpha brain waves because I've had some practice with it. But that's, relatively typical of somebody, average person, who has had some practice with meditation. But Tillie, when she sat down, she was operating almost entirely in delta, theta, and alpha. No beta at all. And that was when she was actively talking with people. So I was actually sitting, headphones on, meditating, really going inward and focusing and not getting any visual stimuli or talking to anybody. But she was just sitting there talking, having a normal conversation and operating in a brainwave that we only get when we're in deep sleep. So that is a completely different brain operation, and was really neat to see that there are different types out there, and would also lend some credence to her abilities to communicate with the other side of the veil and get information from that which we can't see or generally sense without great effort or great practice, overcoming our ego and the brain that is useful for interacting with the average person. So the scientist that was measuring these things said, I've never seen this before. It shouldn't be possible for this to be the case, because again, the average person, when they're in Delta, they are completely out. That is the dream world where people say they, astral project and, experience a different dimension. That is how the average human would do it, but not her. She is awake in this reality, talking to us, or so we think or perceive. I don't know. I mean, you can get into a different theory about that, but that is what we're all seeing, and according to him, shouldn't be possible. So again, this is unprecedented and some evidence that, like you said, could be evidence of this disclosure, these other people that are here. We don't know, obviously. I can't tell you that she's an alien or anything like that. She's just my wife, and I love her, and seems like another person to me. But there are measurable differences. So, and we're going to be putting up some information on our YouTube channel here that is going to actually show snapshots of the brainwave frequencies, the difference between hers and mine, side by side, for people to be able to see and judge for themselves, basically.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Question?
So, yeah, I was gonna say, did you have a question, or?
So that's where it kind of started out. I mean, is there our show's heavily based on UFO, UAP, ET. You guys have any insight on that phenomenon at all?
Yeah. So, we're kind of in the camp that beings are interdimensional, that they're the ET thing. It's okay. So we'll back up a little bit here. Mimics and ETs and all of those beings, we think, and this is based on some of the experiences that I've had, they are non-human entities that are living in the higher dimensions that have reason, one way or the other, to interact with humankind. And, mimics would be things that will present themselves in certain ways based on what they wish to get out of the interaction with the human. So if ETs might exist, I mean, I'm not saying that they don't, it's just, for us, we tend to view things more as interdimensional rather than extra-dimensional.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, so all of my experiences, I can't say that I have had any entities that have presented themselves as extraterrestrial, as grays, as people, would describe them. Mine have all been, like I said, attempting to elicit certain responses from me, whether that be absolute horror, abject terror, or as more of a, friendly sort of conversational. So, I have had experiences with non-human entities. It's just the way that they have presented themselves have not been like aliens. And as far as, UFOs go, I have not seen like the Tic Tac in the sky or the Delta or, the lights or anything like that. What I have seen tends to be a little bit off the path. So I'll talk about that now, just to give you some context. So Tillie and I had been, a couple of different occasions, had been sitting outdoors having a campfire and, just watching the stars. And we had noticed, this was two separate occasions, that something that was labeled as the planet Venus. So I, have a app on my phone where I can look up and it
shows you.
Oh, yeah. I have that.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So we're sitting out there and we see the moon, and then we see, what would be called a planet because it's a very bright star. And, okay, it's Venus, And as I label it Venus, no, it's Venus, I notice, I'm staring at it, it starts to ever so slowly descend towards the horizon. Like, if you've watched a clock in the hands of a clock, it's such a slight movement that you really have to focus. But you're like, is it moving? Yeah, it's moving. It's moving.
Right.
And over the course of a couple of hours, this so-called planet moved, and I know it moved because it changed position from where it was by the moon, and with the tree line, it moved down towards the tree line, almost disappeared, and then by the end of that 2 hours had come back up towards the moon.
Oh wow!
And I mean, of all the times that I've ever looked at the stars in the sky, I never really noticed that. But here I am now being more mindful as part of my awakening, I guess you could say. actually paying attention to things around me instead of, doing this bills, job, work, money, blah, 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 blah,
Right.
blah,
Yeah. Yeah, that stuff.
Yep. Saw this planet. And so that was the first time we saw that at the campfire, just saw that, okay. And then again, some time later, some months later, don't know how long, another campfire, another incident where the same planet, did the same thing, but now we're a little bit further out in the woods. And I think this was probably sometime in the summer of last year. Um, I look off just out a distance of the campfire, the campfire light, and I see in the trees, in between the trees, there is, I describe it, a lot of things I describe are in relation to food because, so this looked like a pretzel rod, all right? So we're talking like, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 inches, whatever, 8, 10, 12 inches. And it was about that big around. But the quality of light that was coming out of this pretzel rod that was hovering, right at about what would be head height, was a depth and a richness of white that I've never seen before. From LEDs, fluorescence, incandescence, there's a lot of different lights I've seen. But this, like I said, there was a depth and a richness to it that seemed like it was interdimensional. That's all I can say. It was so sentient is the only word. Like, it kept coming to mind that there was a sentience to it and a communication from it that was mental, that when I saw it, I could tell that it was just watching us, and it saw me, and then ever so slowly just kind of ducked behind a shed that was off in the woods. And I'm, again, that's one of those
awesome.
things where I'm sitting there staring at it, and I, look over at Tillie, and this was one of those times where she hadn't seen it. But I described it to her, and then I kind of, peek around my chair, I get up, I walk around. We're in the middle of the woods. There is nothing that could have given that sort of light, much
Right.
less that quality of light,
How far was
And
it from you?
it was, so just outside of the reach of the campfire light. So I would say maybe 12 to 15 feet.
Oh, that's
at most.
Oh, wow.
close.
Pretty
Okay.
close.
Yeah.
And and this is again one of those things that oh yeah, and it was interesting too. I remember now that this experience happened right after Tillie had done some filming about a similar paranormal experience or phenomena, basically. So this thing manifested, I guess, as a result.
Yeah.
Kind of just coming to watch, like, hey, y'all talking about me? Just
Right. Yeah. I'm here.
So
Hello.
yeah, right.
Hello.
So,
Is it me?
but again, this is interesting because they, depending on what they want to do, what they want to elicit from you, they can cause fear, or they can be like, hey, no, it's okay, don't worry about it, and they are being mindful of that immediate, fight or flight that humans will go into when they see something they are unfamiliar with. So, and that's, again, we switch right into that brain because we're just spooky as a species. That's what we are designed to do. If we weren't, we wouldn't survive here very long.
Right.
So it's it's a survival mechanism that we have, but it does take some conscious, control on our behalf to manage that. You're never going to get rid of it, which is why when people say, "Oh, I want to kill my ego," no, you don't.
Yeah, you need
You
it.
really don't.
You still
You need
need
it
it.
here. Right. You just want to work with it, cooperate with it,
Correct.
and that sort of mentality will also get you a long way when you're dealing with paranormal entities. It's more likely that you're going to experience the kind that are maybe just there to watch. They mean no harm, and they will, telepathically communicate that to you. And even if it doesn't appear as words in your brain, if you're connected to your body, you'll feel that. You'll be like, okay, I want to be afraid, but I'm not.
Yeah.
Because this thing is working directly with that part of you, which is absolutely amazing. That gets into, Reiki and energy work and all of that. It lends credence to that. And then for me, is a particularly humbling experience because it tells me that I am not necessarily always in control
Right.
of my body, my emotions. These things have that sort of power. And to develop a little bit of humility, recognize there's a bigger fish out there, will
Yep.
go a long way. Perfect example I can tell you of another experience, an interdimensional entity that an experience that I had, which demonstrated that to me without question. So this was many of my paranormal experiences, not all of them, but this was probably back in 2023, a couple years, 2, 3 years ago, something like that. Um, Many of my paranormal experiences happen when I know that I'm in the theta brainwave state, that twilight, somewhere between sleep and awake, because it's like a radio frequency. When you're tuned into that, it makes you more perceptive of those other interdimensional beings. So I was sitting up in bed, looking straight ahead, and there is a mirror to my left on the wall. And I know, because I'm looking straight ahead, that if anything appears in the mirror, it's because there's something in front of me. In our brain, in our programming, with our experience with mirrors, this would make sense. However, I'm looking dead ahead, and I can see from my periphery that something darts past inside the mirror. Okay. So this is when, like, okay, the hair on the back of my neck stands up, and I'm feeling really uneasy, and there's nothing that's like there to calm me down. There's this very quiet, vacuum of of perception going
Space.
on, and all I have is knowing that I've seen something move in the mirror, and it's not here in the
Right.
environment. It's in the mirror. So I get up the balls to, turn to look at it, because that's probably gonna be important, I never
Yeah.
know what's coming. Like, so, even though I don't want to do it, right? So I look over, and coming head first through the mirror is something so large. I mean, this is like a small square mirror that only the head is fitting through, and only just, right? So, like, the message I'm getting is that this is a big dude, right? And it's entirely black, right? So, like, deep, deep black shadow. And this all happened so fast that I had no time to process it, and I think that was the point, is that I'm seeing this thing come through, and immediately it was like somebody just turned on the pure faucet, you know, of absolute abject terror.
Yeah.
Like, my life's been good. Yeah, I had a Marine for a father who threatened to beat me within an inch of my life, but, like, nothing. I was never really afraid for my life. I've lived a good life in that way. So when I felt this, it was like, just full on absolute, like, pure frequency terror. And I start screaming, like I had no control over it, right? So if it could, every orifice in me opened up, like,
And just
I
out.
am nothing but a channel for terror,
Right.
right? And I'm feeling this viscerally, right? But luckily, this was, again, at least a few years into knowing Tillie, that I had had some experience with lucid dreaming. So I knew how to wake myself up when I needed to, and I did. I woke myself up, and my heart's pounding on my chest. I'm
Right.
sweating, I'm
Oh
shaking,
man.
right? Like the whole gamut, right? So it's not just in the dream; it's actually affecting my body, right? So I look over at Tillie. She's sound asleep, and hey, wake up! Like, you need to know about this, right?
Yeah.
And she's not immediately frightened by anything. She always sits in this place of objectivity, just taking everything in. She doesn't have that immediate response, which is one of those things that makes her so different from the average person. So she's sitting there, just kind of looking around, thinking, maybe reaching to try to talk to somebody, and nothing's there. She said, I'm not feeling anything, but I'll let you know if something happens. It'll be okay, I think. So, okay, you're the authority on this, boss. I will defer to you on that.
Yeah.
Clearly, I don't know.
Right.
So I leave for work, and she invites this entity in, and she later told me that she realized what had happened. So literally just the day before, she had been talking to one of her colleagues about this particular entity and what this entity had in its business with humanity, essentially. And the entity did not appreciate that
Oh.
whatsoever.
Oh wow.
So she didn't know this, and so as she knew immediately, she's like, okay, now I put the pieces together. I know what happened here, and was very humble, very apologetic in speaking to this entity. And an arrangement was made. So this is something that's also different between the neurodivergent person like that and the average community person,
Right.
is that they, in non-human entities, can make arrangements with each other. Everybody will come to the table. There is a mutual understanding and a total cooperation and respect on, these rules, 1, 2, 3, will be followed. And if any deviation needs to be made, we will all come to the table. We will all agree on a solution, and we will all enact that. There is no ifs, ands, or buts, no substitutions, extensions or refunds, as Robin Williams in Aladdin says. There is no change to that without all parties being in agreement. So this is something that humans generally don't do. They'll make an agreement. Maybe they're not paying attention, they'll forget, and they'll violate it later, or they'll say, oh, well, I think I should violate it because, the ends justifying the means.
Right.
Or I'm just hungry and I really don't feel like doing this right now.
Right.
There are any number of ways that they'll violate that agreement. This is not how non-human entities work. And if you do violate those agreements, that is a contractual obligation, contractual agreement for a tit-for-tat response, essentially. So
Right.
Tillie said, I'm very sorry. We agreed on these rules. We'll do these things. Never again. We're good now. And since then,
Nothing?
true to word, there has been no negative experience. And Tillie is on such a vibration that, there could be no consequence to her directly. So the only way to send a message, essentially, was to go through me.
Wow.
Right.
Next of kin, basically, because I was on that easily manipulated frequency.
Right.
So as much as I'd like to think I have control over myself, my ego, I don't.
You don't.
I need to just admit that humility, and live in that all the time.
Is the mirror still in the bedroom?
No.
No.
In fact, after that, I never really felt, comfortable with mirrors anyway.
Same. I don't like them in the bedroom. I agree.
Yeah. No.
It's a window.
So that one
It's a
was-
door.
That one was there because she liked to do makeup and near a
Right.
natural light source and, whatever. But after that, she was like, nope, no mirrors.
Yeah.
We removed that mirror,
Yeah.
disposed of it, shut that point. So,
Right.
Shut that
yeah.
port down.
no
Yep.
longer
No
welcome
more.
here. So, yeah.
Pick a different
so,
door.
Yeah. right.
There's a
So,
theory
yeah,
that UAP, paranormal, and interdimensional things are related. That's come up quite a bit as we, take
Yeah.
this journey.
Mhm.
So in MUFON, we're not allowed to even talk about anything that's other than the physical
But we do.
properties. We do, but I don't say I don't want to say it's banned, but we don't get a chance to really explore some of the things like that such as you and Tillie's have experienced. That when I listened to your talk about it, I said, these things could be tied together.
I think they are.
Yeah. I 100% believe that they are. Again, mimicry and what Tillie has called glamour. Essentially, glamour would be equal to like a holographic projection. So,
Right.
what do you call that? Like invincibility, cloaks, and misdirection and that sort of thing.
Right.
It's what non-human entities can use to change their appearance.
Yep.
It's not quite the same as shape shifting, which is physically actually
Shaping.
changing
Yeah.
on a genetic level. But yeah, that is all. Yeah, I think that's what a lot of these non-human entities are able to do. They can use mimicry or glamour. They can manipulate the space around them like a cloaking device. That's what I'm looking for.
Right.
Is like a cloaking device.
Yeah.
And that they appear to us as we expect them to appear, or whatever they want to get from us.
Yep.
So, I think, as you said, the UAEs, UAPs, UFOs, ETs, it's all part of the same thing, which is why when I say paranormal, I mean
All of it.
all of them.
Yep.
Yeah,
Everything. Everything that seems extrasensory to us or inexplicable all belongs in the same category. So
Yeah, I
we
don't
like
think-
to separate things and put them in boxes.
Right.
But
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's because we're ego based. We like to
Yep.
tell those stories, and this does this because, and this is why, and they want this and that. We build these ideas of things and what their motivations are inside our own heads based on our own experiences and what we expect. And for them, it's just like, oh, this is fun. I'll just do this because you expect it from me, and I
Yeah.
can, whatever. It's nothing to them,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
In the narrative I got from you guys, you discuss the Mandela effect. It's kind of funny that's mentioned because my oldest son and I were discussing that, about how, it's like Home Depot, we think it used to be the Home Depot, and then all of a sudden it changed to Home Depot. And I thought in Jiffy, and those things, and it's like,
That's
I seem to remember
over
it
the
being
place. It's all over.
and it's what are some of the, you have some experience with that?
Actually, yeah. So, I mean, aside from the usuals that, like, Chick-fil-A is one for us, but the Home Depot definitely rings a bell because we have similar thoughts about the in the Home Depot too. And Chick-fil-A, the way that's spelled, I've had some differences in reality with that. I always thought it was CHIK for me, but apparently it's CHICK now. At least that's the reality that we're living in.
I thought it was CHIK too.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, we agree with you on that. And my theory is just that's dimensional realities all going on simultaneously, and we as beings of frequency and vibration are just vibrating, vacillating between those slightly different frequencies, because I mean there's infinite frequencies, so to get everything right across one person's perception right, consistent is impossible because we're always changing.
Correct.
At every given moment, we're always changing. So, those little proofs, for me at least, they're proofs, evidence that that's actually happening. So, but beyond that, Tillie and I have also had experiences where she has had an entire day's worth of memories of us together that I didn't live, and vice versa. So she'll say, remember when, and this, I'll tell this story because it's the one that sticks most prominently in my mind. She described a day that we went to an Amish market, went around the flea market eating food. She's like, hey, we went and got this ice cream, at this place, and you loved it. And, she wanted to go back, and it had started with, hey, let's go back to that Amish place. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, but here and there, and you this, and
right.
that.
And you're like
no bells are being rung right now. I'm sorry. It's empty. Like, and she's getting a little upset and frustrated because sometimes she even thinks she's like, am I crazy?
No.
Like, wondering, and I'm like, that place exists. I know it's there. I've heard of it, but I, at least, have never been there. My consciousness that's in this brain right now
correct,
has never been there, right? So, and we have had a few of those where, entire memories just completely different. So,
dimensions.
And this, dimensions, right? And I always joke, that guys could definitely weaponize this if they wanted to. I wouldn't recommend it.
I already know where you're going to go with this.
Yep. Right. At least for me, I am grateful that I have a wife where I can be like, no, honey, for real, I think that thing that you wanted me to find is in a different dimension. I don't see it.
Right. Correct.
But that has actually happened where she sent me into the garage to look for a bin full of kitchen items. And I went out there. I searched the whole garage, could not find it. And I was like, honey, it is not out there. I have to go to work. So I left for work. 10 minutes later, I get a text message, that angry text message, right? She's like, it was right there, and I'm, honey, I swear to you, I went out there, I looked for it. And until that happened again sometime later, where it actually happened like for her, she was like, okay, I'm really sorry that I yelled at you, for not finding that bin. It wasn't me just going in or half-assing something. No, it really, that thing, just because when she saw it, when she found that bin, literally you just opened the garage door and it was sitting right in front of the door. Like, opening the door and taking a step inside, I would have kicked it. And she, finally, when she realized like what was going on, I'm so sorry that happened.
That happens to me all the time. It's more ADD for me. It's just like I don't see it. Well, it's right here.
And well, and for her, it happened actually in a crazy, a short story I'll give you real quick. It happened in a very eye-opening way. She was sitting on our back patio. It was a concrete slab, and she was out there with, she was just out there, and she thought that her cat was out there, but she looking, can't find her. Oh, she must be somewhere. And then as she's looking off into the corner of the patio where the pavement is, she literally saw her cat crawl out of the pavement and then walk around.
There's videos of that where something just crawls out of nowhere.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, her
dimensions.
cat.
That's
Right.
dimensions.
It is exactly right. And I mean, the cat, like she described it to me, and I could literally see it in my head where she came in, front first, kind of like putting her paws up, and then, the
Yeah.
butt came afterwards,
Yep.
and she saw that, and even her, having seen all kinds of stuff, went, oh my God, the bin.
Right.
So, yeah, that's, if more people want stories like that, they can check out, because she wrote about that in this book.
What's
that
the name
she
of the
wrote
book?
Oh yeah, the book.
It's called Weird Time.
And then hold it closer, a little bit closer.
Yeah, hold it
so
closer
people
so we can see the
So-
screen.
go weird
Kim
time.
Quartz
Okay.
and Sean Castile. She is among many authors in this book, but she writes about that and
Perfect.
other like Mandela experiences and stuff, time warps and stuff like that.
And then real
that
quick,
people
we'll do it
might
at the
get
end. What's your YouTube?
Your
Oh,
YouTube
yeah,
channel.
So, yeah, the YouTube channel that we have is called The Weird Walk Home. And right now I'm doing a series called The Intermediary Diaries, where I talk about each of my individual experiences that I have had since coming into contact with Tillie, the paranormal stuff. And then I kind of give like a little lesson learned out of that, how that sort of evolved me into being, I think, a much more balanced person, and has definitely helped to inform a better quality of interaction with interdimensional beings. So I've had more experiences with them. I don't know how much time we have left. We're getting close to the end probably, but
And this is it, right? The weird walk home. Is that
it
The
should
weird
be.
one.
Yeah,
I
I think
I
it's
can't see if
yeah.
you hear it. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Perfect?
But yeah, that aside from that experience with the shadow person that scared the ever loving bejesus out of me, I have not had any other negative, what I would call negative or fear based paranormal or interdimensional being experiences. They have all been, if not very positive and refreshing, they've just been neutral, curious, watching, just kind of a, hey, I'm here kind of thing. So it makes a big difference, I think, in the work that I have done, this inner work in not being food for, the paranormal entities that would wish to make me food in
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And being more humble, and how people always say, no wonder the aliens drive by and lock their doors, like,
There's-
Don't mess with them.
There is
yeah,
a
trying
reason.
not to be that person,
Right.
Yeah.
It just comes down to doing your work, being humble, accepting where you can do better, and being more objective. That's kind of a big part of it, which is tough for the ego to do. It wants to protect itself and tell stories, and
Keeping
I
the
get it.
ego in check all the time.
Yeah, and there's a thing of other entities feed on fear, that they manifest themselves like this, and that they actually feed on it.
Sorry.
So it's and when they present themselves, like you said, the big black thing that came out of the mirror. You may have been you weren't terrified though. It was kind of like but still kind of sketchy.
Sure. Yeah. What's interesting too, it's something that's coming to mind to say, is that here on this planet we're used to the animals here. If we're not the top of the food chain, you can't just negotiate with a bear who's hungry and be like, "Hey, Mr. Bear, please don't eat me."
Right.
I'd like to live. Right.
Yeah.
You've got to be very defensive and protective. But what's interesting about non-human entities is that if you can't not be afraid in some ways. Like there's always going to be that ego part of you. But what you can do, because these non-human entities, a lot of them are sentient, you can say, look, I really don't want to be food. Please, I would like to cooperate, as best as possible. If for anything, to just recognize that, like, I don't want any smoke, you do your thing, I'll do my thing, and I do not, please do not make me food. That sort of request, humility, cooperation, like saying those things actually speaks to them, because they are sentient. Just because some of them, feed off of fear doesn't mean that they're indiscriminately, coming after people. Like I said, it's a tit for tat relationship. it's you have a lot more control over that than you think you do. Not by controlling somebody else, which is what we're used to trying to do,
Right.
but by coming at it with some humility and respect.
Yeah.
So there's so many more stories that I could tell, but I don't know how much more time you've got.
Yeah.
We got a few minutes if
Yeah.
you want to bring a couple up. Good.
I've got a question. Orbs.
Sure.
Have you had any experiences with orbs?
I guess not in that traditional way where they're the little balls of light. The pretzel rod is the closest orb that I personally have.
And you live near a forest? Is that what you said?
We did.
You
yeah,
did.
We used to live more out in the country. Now we're living a little more domestically, but yeah. So yeah, it's still fairly wooded in the area, but not the forest that we were living in. So
Yeah, that's why I asked about
consequently
orbs.
was on the edge of a state park, a whole other place where some weird stuff happens.
Oh, yeah.
It was
Parks are
on the edge of the state park. So
parks are a magnet for all kinds of things.
Yeah, we've got one of the guests we bring on lives on a Lake Okeechobee down in Florida, and he says a lot. He sees so much stuff down there.
Yep.
Yeah, but there's a nuclear power plant right on the edge of the lake.
Oh, really?
Too, so it's kind of like in UAP land, that's what they gravitate toward. They say. I haven't seen anything myself. People sometimes wonder why I do this, but
You need to meditate more.
I'm really curious about all this phenomenon. I think it's great. I love to hear all these stories and listen to people's experiences because it's and sometimes not that I'd want to experience some of those things.
Sure you do. Why not?
Vicariously through other people.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll live with that.
Yeah.
I'm a musician, so I've seen all kinds of shit.
Are you a musician, Artemaeus?
I mean, I dabbled in acoustic guitar when I was in college. Like that typical thing. That's how you get the chicks or whatever. So I learned a little bit. But,
That's close enough.
That's why Matt does it.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah. It gets chicks.
Yeah.
And cats.
I was that lame dude. But yeah. So yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But
It opens up your...
Cool.
What I was gonna say, what's interesting is that music, reading music, listening to music, you are exercising different parts of your sensory capability, and not just living up here in your head. Right?
Vibrations.
So, right. That's
Frequency.
part of what. Literally, right?
Yep.
When you're training for that kind of work, energy work, meditation, that's what they'll tell you is get more in touch with your body instead of being up here in your head. Like hear frequencies, listen to the birds, listen to whatever when you're meditating. Pay attention to those things. So, so it's interesting that you say that music definitely does those things.
Yeah.
But I'll give you one more story here for you that people might find interesting.
Sure.
Yes.
So I, moving forward, this was relatively recently, within the past year here, in a dream state. So I had an experience with an entity that presented itself as an Egyptian god, which was pretty cool. So dreams for me, I'll either remember them or I don't. And in my personal theory, dreams that you remember are dreams that are meant for some kind of message. You're actually perceiving things from another dimension, probably. And the dreams that you don't remember, it's probably just your subconscious processing some stuff, your ego stuff, whatever.
Right.
You don't necessarily have to remember that. It's just the brain doing maintenance and cleaning. So in this dream, I'm walking down, a street side where there's, a bunch of stores, cafes, whatever, up against the street. And I, look over and, and for anybody that's seen the movie Gremlins, where the main character gets Gizmo, the little walks into this shop and it's dimly lit.
Yep.
There's a little old Asian man doddering in the back, and there's a bunch of curious oddities everywhere. And so I walk in and check it out, whatever. And this little old Asian man at the back of the shop, he sees me, and he goes, "Oh, hey, what you need is over there." And I look at him, I'm like, okay, cool, right? Like, and in the dream state, it's interesting because you tend to be more objective because that ego's stripped away. It's not there anymore. You're just there, right?
Yep.
So, and then when you wake up, you're like, what the hell, man? So okay, yeah, what's over there? And I see it, a brick wall, nothing really there. And he's like, no, down there. And I look around, and sure enough, there's like a hidden little gap in the wall.
Right.
And there's a staircase that goes.
It's always stairs.
Down, right?
Always stairs.
Right,
Oh, wow.
exactly, right? So this is, get the message going deep into your subconscious,
Yep.
right? So,
Yep.
the stairway to the soul. So I go down the stairs, I get down the stairs, and then it opens up into this giant cavernous movie theater, okay? So I sit down at the back of the movie theater. I don't want to be intrusive, right? I don't want to be that guy. There's a film going on
Right.
on the screen, and it's showing Egyptian priests and priestesses and gods, goddesses. They're just kind of milling about on the screen.
Right.
And I see the crocodile-headed god appear, okay? And he's talking to the priests and priestesses, and then all of a sudden he turns to look, at the audience,
Uh-oh.
and he starts stepping through.
Oh
Right.
Right? So, and now I'm not freaked out, right? I'm just watching this like totally normal that a crocodile-headed god has just stepped through the theater screen and is coming down the aisle to come talk to me, right?
Right.
Nothing weird about that at all. So he gets all the way back, and as he's coming down the aisle, it's cool because he kind of starts shrinking to size. Obviously, if he came through at the size of the screen,
Yeah, you're gone.
Yeah.
You're leaving probably.
yeah. So he's, adjusting size
Yep.
as he gets back to me. And it's cool because when he finally gets to me, he is the most, I say this and it sounds weird coming out of my mouth, but he's like the most handsome thing I have ever seen.
Right. Right.
The quality of the color on his skin and the depth of, it was like high definition on steroids.
Right.
Like, we don't have that in our lives. Like, you think,
That's what gods look
what
like.
yeah, right? What Dreams May Come, that movie, the
Right.
cinematography in there, or Crouching
Great
Tiger, Hidden
movie.
Dragon for anybody. Yeah, so
Yeah.
if you
Another Robin
need
Williams.
that, you start to come close to what I mean by that high definition color. So,
Right.
he's appearing this way. I can see all the bumps and ridges, but it's like not that ugly, scaly crocodile skin, but like perfect.
Right.
So just like I said, handsome, and
Oh.
he's exactly. Godlike.
Right.
And so he's got the full sarcophagus headdress on, which is more like Tutankhamun than, that particular god's normal presentation.
Right.
And the robes, crisp linen, to the floor, right? And as he starts talking to me, it's funny because it was like a badly dubbed movie. Like the lips are sort of moving, and the tongue is like flapping, but it's not like English like you would expect it. Like a crocodile
Right.
can't,
It wasn't a
mouth-
karate movie, was it? No?
No karate moves were
Okay.
So he starts talking to me, and I'm just like, I'm in amazement, right? But it's cool because he's talking to me like any other person, and I'm, talking to him like it's totally cool, like we're buds, it's conversation that's just like he didn't just step out of a theater screen and he's a crocodile god talking to me, like,
Right.
it was so comfortable and refreshing. It wasn't, awkward or anything like that, just like, hey bud, what's up? And so he's talking to me and he's giving me a message, and I realize that it's not for me.
Right.
He's saying, everything's going to be fine. You did the best that you could. You'll figure out a way to make things, work. It's going to be all right. You did great, basically.
Right.
And okay, so I don't know what he's talking about exactly. But when I wake up, I tell Tillie, and she's like, "Oh my God, I haven't been telling this to you, but I've been thinking about, reorienting the channel." This was when she made her YouTube channel, and she was doing a lot of content and getting a lot of all types of harassments, threats from the people in the military-industrial complex,
What?
from people who were in the media,
wow.
doing all of the stuff like, I won't say Ancient Aliens exactly, but that kind of media, the widespread stuff. And she just wasn't having any of it. She didn't want anything to do with it, so she was feeling pretty discouraged about it. And at this point, I had been through enough of my own inner work, I think, that it was like an initiation where I was being given this message to tell Tillie,
Right.
hey, you did the best that you could with this.
Yes,
and
you're
now,
good. You're right.
take,
You're fine.
yeah, you're okay. Take it this other direction. This other average Joe dude here is
Right.
going to be able to help you
Right.
deliver this message, fulfill this kind of soul contract. So
Yeah.
it was neat because when I did the research later on who this god was, I didn't have a whole lot of context because I don't study Egyptian mythology, so I don't really know. But the crocodile god, his name was Sobek, and he was most known for bringing order from chaos,
Right.
which was really cool.
Right.
So, it wrapped up in all of this, which is the message that we try to give, post disclosure. Now that we know these things are out there, what do we do with it as a message more of peace rather than war? Because we as humans are not going to be cut out for fighting interdimensional beings that have way more awareness and
Correct.
knowledge than we do here on the planet. So it would behoove us to kind of, get it in check,
Yep.
check yourself, bro, and basically bring some order from the chaos. And so Tillie sort of being like a representation of like a goddess of transformation, essentially.
Right.
Somebody with a different brain type that, in other mythologies and other times, like the Oracle at Delphi and, these other beings that were, seen as human but had superhuman knowledge and power.
Right.
They, I think, are operating with that different brain type because they can kind of help to bridge that gap between the non-human entities and the humans that wish to be on that frequency. I'm not saying that what we're doing is the right way, the best way, the only way. Not at all. If somebody wants to be on that warlike frequency and the fear mongering, you go right ahead. You have fun, man. Like, just get yourself all tied up over it. It's not my circus, not my monkeys. And, feel free, basically.
That's
but,
awesome.
we're kind of on that other side of the coin with all of it. So.
Yeah, that's
Cool.
awesome. Show your book again.
Show your book one more time. We're going to wrap it up.
So this is, upside down.
It's all right.
So,
Weird
Time.
Time.
This is what Tillie, it's what she's written in here, specifically about quantum dimensions and time
Perfect.
slips and
The
that
Weird
sort of
Walk.
stuff.
The Weird Walk Home is your
And
YouTube
The
channel.
Weird Walk Home.
The
Yep.
book is on Amazon. We get it from Amazon.
Yep, you can find
Okay.
it on Amazon, and then you can also talk with us directly through Tillie's Facebook profile, which is Tillie Treadwell.
Right.
Tillie Treadwell.
I've got that.
Yeah, I'll add you guys.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Artemaeus.
Thank you, Artemaeus.
very
We're gonna wrap it up. Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Alien Probe Podcast. Welcome comments, questions, or requests to alienprobepodcast@gmail.com. Visit us on Facebook. Check out our website, alienprobe.net, Twitter and Instagram at AlienProbePod, YouTube, Rumble, and Patreon at Alien Probe Podcast. Artemaeus, thank you. It's been awesome talking to you. Hopefully we made the cut. We can get Tillie on here. And we appreciate you coming on. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having me. You guys as well.